Mama. Welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Gibbs, and this podcast exists to help scholarly mamas like you to achieve your life and academic goals without sacrificing what matters most. Here, we're changing the overwhelm, juggle, struggle narrative around what it means to be a mama on an academic journey to one of empowerment, fulfillment, and purposeful success. So how do we successfully navigate these journeys? Well, first, we need the space to embrace this unique blend. Let's begin by saying yes to creating a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, because that's when we truly become purposefully whole. So get ready for the most non-traditional, unconventional, and revolutionary approach to PhD motherhood, because one thing I have learned over my many years of experience on this journey is that if you want something different, you have to do something different. But you must be brave enough to think differently first. So, Mama, are you in? Fabulous! Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode, which was all about traveling with kids and how we can manage that as scholarly mamas to make the most of the time that we get to share with our little ones, with our families. And in this week's episode, I really just want to focus, now that the kids are finished their summer holidays and back to school and we're all back into the routine of things, and we're also beginning a new academic year, I wanted to share some tips for how you can conquer this new academic year as a scholarly mama. And so I'm going to share just a few tips in different areas and some examples of how it's worked for me and how you can either tweak, adapt, or utilize these tips for yourself and apply them to your own journey. But before I get into that, I really just wanted to welcome you all back to the show. Hats off to all the mamas out here who have just survived the back to school preparations. Honestly, it has been relentless. I did a lot of the back to school shopping before we left, so getting the kids sorted with their school attire and uniforms and everything. But some bits I left until we got back from holiday, and that was just, it's still not even over, to be fair. The kids are back in school and there's still a few bits that I'm waiting to be delivered. So I think really this has been a reminder of why I always prepare for back to school at the end of the academic year as opposed to waiting for the beginning of the new academic year. And yeah, so like I said, I know what it's like to be surrounded by pieces of paper with reminders, to-do lists, sticky notes, color-coded calendars, and a mountain of guilt for not being prepared enough. I know what that feels like. So I am excited to share with you all some of the tips that over the years, at various times I have tried and have been helpful in preparing for the new academic year as a PhD student and as a mother. Of course, I'm no longer a PhD student. Thank God for that. But these are some of the things that have helped over the years. And so the first one is time management strategies, right? Creating a realistic schedule. I know it's difficult balancing your research responsibilities, work responsibilities, family responsibilities, and all of those bits. And I think really what I have found helpful is being really realistic with my schedule, not overcommitting and not overestimating how much time I actually have available. I guess using a template, using some kind of calendar. I prefer a digital calendar. I use Google Calendar to keep me organized. But, the secret, I guess, is having fixed blocks of time on that calendar for work, dedicated time for your research, dedicated time for family, and also time for self-care. And everything else on the list fits around those non-negotiables. So you're very clear before you even commit to anything, say yes to anything. You're very clear and realistic about what time you have available. And honestly, Google Calendar, it's simple. You can color code your various categories of things. So you can have one color for each of the items I mentioned, like work, family time, self-care, research /PhD time. And so really using that to visually see what time you have available. Honestly, it has been a game changer for me. In the past, I have used paper diaries and I would print a timetable of all of my commitments, and that was really helpful. I mean, I guess it's the same in principle, but being able to do that digitally is that much easier, especially if you've got 1 or 2 weeks that things have changed. So the schedule is slightly different. It just helps you to live in real time. And one of the shocking things for me is when I look at that calendar and see the blocks of time that I've got dedicated to certain things, it really makes it so clear to me how much time I have available to do other things, to do things that are unplanned, or to do things that I want to do, but I'm not sure if I've got the time. I can look at that calendar and easily see, okay, I actually haven't got the time this week to do that. I can push that to next week, or here's a little slot of time I can use to fit something in. So really, I guess just being realistic about the schedule will help you to conquer this new academic year. The second thing for me is around setting priorities and boundaries. Now, we've already talked about identifying those non-negotiables, including family commitment. So for example, for me, every Friday evening or Saturday, we had that dedicated family time, and that was sacred time that rarely got moved unless it was absolutely necessary to do so. And really that helped me to be able to say no to non-essential activities. So things that really could be put off, could wait, because I had that committed time that was dedicated to the non-negotiables. So for example, I learned to politely decline departmental social events, for example, while I was doing my PhD, that conflicted with any of my son's school performances or ceremonies or activities where I wanted to be there to support them. Because for me, it was okay to prioritize my family. It was okay to say no to certain things because I had to say yes to other things, because I wanted to say yes to other things. And just being really clear on my priorities and setting those clear boundaries and being open with those boundaries so that people know that actually this is the reason why I'm not attending, not making up some lame excuse that, you're tired or something. Just being really honest. Like, I have other commitments that I am prioritizing on this particular day, and therefore I wouldn't be able to attend, and being okay with that because you are prioritizing what really matters to you. And that's okay, right? Okay, so the next tip for helping you conquer the new academic year is really maximizing your productivity during work or study hours. Now, we all know that as scholarly mamas, we have more things on our to-do list than we have time available. And so it's really important to, as I mentioned, block out time for those non-negotiables. And for most of us, work is one of those things as well, because we've got bills to pay, we've got kids to look after, we've got priorities, we've got financial commitments. And so really maximizing the time that you do have available to get your work done or to get your PhD work done is really important. It's not something that can be left off of the priority list, even though what I would say is, going back to that idea of boundaries, being really clear about what time you actually have available to do this work. But in any event, when you do have that time to do your work, to do your PhD work or other paid work, when you do have that time, it's really important to be as productive as possible. It's surprising how much you can accomplish in focus bursts of work time. So really blocking out that time and being really focused during that time to get as much as you can done. People use all kinds of strategies for this, all kinds of techniques, but what we have done, or what I have done as a result of going through this process myself and really having little time but long to-do lists, is really prioritizing these focus bouts of time. You don't have to commit to sitting at a computer for 10, 12 hours when you can really maximize the time you do have, because you don't have 10 to 12 hours a day to work on your PhD. And so really just saying, look, this is the time I've got available. I want to make the absolute most of it. How can I do that? Now, this is where Scholarly Mama's focus comes in. We have created a space, a co-working space for you to be able to tackle this progress drought of not getting much done, feeling like, the time is just ticking along and progress is actually going nowhere, and really maximizing that time. And one of the things that I have found really helpful is not just working in focus bouts in isolation, but having some kind of accountability for that. And by joining our co-working space, Scholarly Mama's Focus, you have that built-in accountability. You're not working alone. You're working independently, but you're not working alone. You're not working in isolation. You have the support of other mamas who are also trying to tackle their to-do list and also need that accountability to get where they want to go in terms of progress. So, I guess this is a bit of a shameless plug. Scholarly Mama's Focus is open. There's a minimum cost per session, but it gives you the opportunity to finally get back in control of that to-do list and to do that in a supportive, productive way. And so that's Scholarly Mama's Focus. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is also, we talked about time management and productivity and all that, but also the importance of self-care and stress management. Honestly, I cannot emphasize the importance of self-care for academic success and also for work-life harmony. I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. Remember that you cannot pour from an empty cup. And so taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary for your success and for your family's well-being, right? If you want to achieve purposeful success, you really need to look after the person who is going to be able to enjoy the success afterwards. There's no point achieving success and not being well enough or not being even around to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So going back to this idea of self-care and self-love, I recently shared a reel on Instagram questioning or challenging you to think about who are you when you peel back the layers of all these accolades and all these titles. Who is a person beneath all of that? What does she love? What are her passions? What does she want to do with her life? Where does she want to go? Who does she want to become? These are the questions that are hard. They are hard, but they really challenge us to get to know ourselves and get to love ourselves, because really we wear lots of hats, and quite often we're so proud of all the hats that we wear, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes wearing all of these hats and carrying the weight of expectations that come with all of these hats can actually cause us to risk losing ourselves in the middle of all of that. And if we want to really uncover the depths of our truest purpose, our passions and our purpose in this life, we really have to peel back those layers. We have to get to know and love the person at the core of all of this, right? That self-love, it's the most underestimated, underrated success strategy that there is. And I wrote a blog post on this a couple of months ago and also shared a podcast episode. I believe it's episode 70, which is called Self-Love as a Revolutionary Success Strategy. And it really is that. And a lot of times we are so busy juggling all the balls and wearing all the hats and doing all the things that we do not even know and love who we are inside. And so if you want to achieve purposeful success, you have to start there. Who is there when we peel back all of these layers? When we look beneath the surface, who is there? Do we know her? Do we love her? Have a think about that, Mama. The next, self-care, self-love, self-management strategy is focusing on the things that allow you to stress relief. Like, what are the things that help you to calm everything down when there's so much chaos and there's so much going on around you? How can you find a way through all of that? And again, I am not a therapist, so please, if you are feeling the weight and the burden of this journey and it's becoming too much, please do seek mental health support. I'm sure your university has counselors and therapists that you can access. And I'd love for you to tap into those resources if you need them and if they are available, because really and truly, sometimes it can get a lot. This can be a lot. And no matter how strong you think you are, having that support is never a bad thing, right? But just for example, whether you are religious or not, maybe meditation and prayer may be one way that helps you to relieve the stress of this journey. I know for me, for example, my faith was definitely something that got me through many of an academic year and over many of an academic hurdle. So if that is something that you practice, that's definitely something to tap into as well this coming academic year. Of course, there's also mindfulness if that's your thing, practicing mindfulness exercises and really just using those tools if that's something that you find helpful. Whatever it is, find ways of easing the pressure of this journey, making it easier, making it more manageable for yourself and less isolating is really, really important. And speaking about making it less isolating, I think one of the other things that you really do need to do for this new academic year, if you want to conquer this, you want to be prepared, you want to get through it without losing yourself in the process, is really building a support network. Now, this is the one thing that I really wish I had when I was in the throes of navigating my PhD motherhood journey, really having the support of other mamas who were in the same boat. I didn't have it. And it's definitely something that I really deep down inside wish I had, which is why I've created Scholarly Mamas, a space where we can share tips, we can vent, we can support each other and remind each other that you don't have to do this journey alone. You can actually navigate this and build real friendships and connections with people who really get it and who understand the depths of this struggle. As I mentioned, utilizing university resources for mental health, that could be part of your support network as well. So lots of universities may offer free counseling sessions. Maybe schedule one at the beginning of the academic year, maybe even at the beginning of each semester, each term. Maybe schedule a check-in with a counselor to help you set your intentions, to help you discuss potential challenges. And again, you can also do this with a coach who understands this journey. I have worked with people in that capacity who have, really felt so alone on this journey, and they didn't really know what working with a coach was going to be like. But once we've worked together, they have been able to gain so much clarity and so much confidence in moving forward in their PhD or their academic journey. And I think it's something that I feel so called to do, to be able to serve other mamas in this way, because I know how hard it was for myself. And I know that this is something that I wish I had. I did tap into a coach during my PhD, but it wasn't in the same capacity as working with someone who actually navigated the journey that I did and was able to create that space. But it was still helpful for me to be able to have space to just think through, my goals, what I wanted to achieve, and to get some tips and guidance about how I could go about achieving those goals. And so tapping into those therapeutic services that you may have access to, like counseling or therapy, to help you process past traumas and to support you through any mental health challenges, may be well worth it. And also considering working with a scholarly mama coach like myself to help you get unstuck and to get you well on your way to creating that purposeful success that you desire for yourself, to help you put the strategies in place to get you there, to help you set your goals, set your intentions, and put the strategies in place to help you achieve those goals, right? And just to create space for you to think through all of this, for you to work through this in a safe space without judgment, to have a detached thinking partner, right? That also may be something worth considering. And if that is something that you are considering, you can actually have a free consultation with me. There's no cost attached to it. We can just work through where you feel stuck at the moment and brainstorm some strategies for how you can get out of this progress drought and rut and back on track towards purposeful success. If you're interested in doing that, you can book a free discovery call via Scholarly Mama's Optimum, and we can have a chat and see what you can do to help you move forward. That's what this is all about, getting you one, or should I say, a few steps forward towards your goals. Okay, so we've talked about the time management strategies and we've talked about the self-care and support strategies. But logistically, we all know that as a scholarly mama, we've got some pretty interesting dynamics that we need to navigate, and even on a practical level. So, for example, childcare. Honestly, there is no way that I could have navigated my PhD motherhood journey without childcare, because we do not have families. You know, we don't have family here in this country. And so we rely on sources of paid childcare to help with working and PhDing and getting everything that we need to get done outside of our roles as parents. And so although I know that childcare can be expensive, it's really important at the start of this academic year. If you're at the beginning of the year, you're wondering, how am I going to get through this? How can I conquer this year? How can I set myself up for success this year? Really is find appropriate childcare. I would love if childcare providers offered discounts for students for childcare. It would be just amazing. But even if that isn't the case, you could still look into the support available from, for example, the government. If there's government schemes or local schemes to help with free childcare, it may not be all the childcare that you need, but it may help you to supplement paid childcare. And also maybe there could be tax breaks available, tax relief for you if you are also paying for childcare as a scholarly mama. And so really just exploring those childcare options, or maybe you have family nearby who are available to help you with childcare. Tap into that, ask for the help, take the support where it's available. If that's an option for you, great. But if it's not, exploring paid childcare options in the early, especially if there's going to be long waiting lists and that sort of thing, then you want to be doing that early. I remember with the nurseries that we've used, we literally had to register them when I was pregnant because we needed to make sure we got the spaces available. I didn't want to risk not having childcare available. And so we made sure and had our kids registered really early. And that meant that when we needed the childcare, we had it. We didn't have to now go onto some waiting list and be scrambling or have to use alternative childcare that we really weren't happy with. So really planning ahead, thinking about what your childcare needs will be for this academic year, planning accordingly, and then also looking for sources of support financially if that's available for that childcare. Okay, so one of the other things that I remember experiencing was, how do I explain this struggle to the kids? Like, can I explain it to them? Will they understand? And I think really, as a working parent, as a scholarly mama, it's important that you offer age-appropriate explanations of your work to the kids. So really sitting down with them and explaining what mummy's doing, why mummy isn't able to play at this particular time on this particular day, and why, mummy looks like she's always working on something really complex and complicated. And I remember telling our boys, I don't know if they will remember this, but I remember saying when they were little that, mummy works to help others feel better when they're not well. She helps teach others how to do the same. And she's also kind of, I guess, trying to solve a really big puzzle. I guess that was kind of the research element to it. And they kind of found that fun and would repeat it to me sometimes. But it really was important for me to find a way to help them understand that there was this other thing that Mummy was doing outside of, loving and caring and raising them. That was also really important for Mummy, but also important for the world. And Mummy was giving to the world in this way. And I think that was really important for me to find just a way of making that feel accessible to them, to understand, and fun and positive. So it didn't feel like it was taking me away from them all the time, but it was something that Mummy was doing that was meaningful and important. And so, just finding a child-appropriate way of, a child-friendly way of explaining your work, explaining your research, explaining your journey to the kids, just so that they understand what Mummy's doing. And then creating special routines for quality time together, I think, is also really important, because you want to make sure that they don't feel that this other thing, this research, this PhD, is actually the reason why you're never available emotionally for them, or never available even physically for them. And so having those special routines for that quality time and making the most of that, being able to savor that, is really important. So for example, every night, no matter how busy I was, no matter how stressed I felt, no matter how much was on my plate, we made time for reflection on the day, on everybody's day. We made time for bedtime stories. We made time for devotion and prayers. And also, I think one of the things that's really important is, as a mama of multiple kids, giving each person their little individual time. It doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be more than 2 or 3 minutes, but just really focusing individually on what everybody's navigating. If there's anything that has come up in the day that they want to talk about one-on-one, giving them that opportunity to do that. And so really creating those special quality moments as a part of the routine just helps set you up for success over the academic year. And doing that in the early, right? Getting into a routine quite early on with that will really make life easier for everyone. And so I guess the last point I'm going to share on this topic is really preparing yourself for the academic side of success. So reviewing and updating your research goals nice and early. It's now September. It's a perfect time to get really clear on what are your research goals for this year, for this academic year. What are you trying to achieve? And if they're old goals that you have from last year that you didn't meet, or maybe you want to tweak them a little bit, then doing that now helps set you up for success. So when you are setting goals, as most people do, I definitely do this, is using the SMART goal framework. So instead of saying something like, I want to progress on my thesis, maybe saying something like, I want to complete data analysis for chapter 3 by October 15th. Do you see the difference? Being very specific and very realistic as well when you set that timeline for how you can actually achieve these goals. And it will just help you to make them happen, which is the whole point, isn't it? So being really prepared at this point in the academic year in terms of planning, reviewing, updating your research goals for the next academic year, really important. The other thing is staying up to date, I guess, without lots of time. So we know that we are quite time starved as scholarly mamas. We don't have a whole lot of time available, but with the time we do have, we can make the most of it. So things like grouping your research articles and setting aside maybe 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes every couple of days to just skim the latest research on your commute, for example. Right? Finding ways of making that, finding creative ways of doing that. So it might be like listening to research papers being read to you in audio instead of having to read them physically. Or if you're commuting by train or bus or something, you could always read physical, either paper or digital versions of those. But just really using that time to get your mindset ready for work, get you in that mode, and also keep you up to date on what's happening in your field, especially if you're at the stage of writing up your thesis. One of the other things I will say as well is that, we all accumulate loads of papers in our repertoire. We read loads of papers for our theses and our dissertations. But if you are at a point where you feel overwhelmed by how much reading you have to do, don't forget the obvious, which is go and have a look at people's systematic reviews or narrative reviews or other types of reviews where people have actually done that synthesis already and they have reference papers. Have a look in the reference list, have a look at the papers that they've talked about. If I'm writing anything, I will start with, okay, let me find the latest review on this topic and then work backwards from there, looking at the papers that they have included in their synthesis, reading those, and then coming to my own conclusions. I think that's a really easy way of getting started, right? It is not the total work that needs to be done, but it's a nice way to start at the beginning of an academic year. You're working on a new paper, you're working on a new chapter, you're working on a new project, getting yourself familiar with literature, a nice place to start rather than becoming overwhelmed by millions and millions of papers that you've got saved or that you've downloaded and saved as PDFs. Have a look at the meta-analyses, the systematic reviews, the realist reviews, the narrative reviews, whatever your field might be. Have a look at those papers where people have already done that synthesis and then look at their reference lists and the papers that they've included, and then you can make a start there. And then obviously you do your further due diligence and reading and synthesizing on your own. But if you look at the beginning of the academic year, beginning of a brand new project, it may be a nice way to start. And so as we wrap up this episode, I just wanted to finish with another point here. Thinking about conquering the academic year, I just wanted to leave you with a couple of reminders. So the first one is that you're not just a PhD student. You are more than your PhD, but you're also not just a mom. You're more than a mom as well. You are a scholarly mama, and that unique perspective, honestly, I believe is your superpower in academia. Remember that it's okay to do things differently. It's okay to set intentions and tweak them and adjust them, at the beginning of the year. You may be setting goals now. You may be setting plans in place, but things may come up over this academic year that force you to have to change those things. And I think that is really important to prepare yourself mentally for. So flexibility really is key. If a strategy, you've tried it and it isn't working, it's okay to pivot, because your PhD journey, your scholarly mama journey, this whole journey, your journeys of becoming, they are uniquely yours. And I guess one of the things that I wanted to share on this point is, as you know, we recently came back from Barbados, and one of the places that we went to when we were there was North Point, which is in the parish of St. Lucie, which is the northernmost part of Barbados. If you've ever been to Barbados, it's not that touristy there, and so you may or may not have visited St. Lucie. But at the North Point of Barbados, there's a really interesting cave there called Animal Flower Cave, where they have these plants that look and behave like animals, I think, or like worms or something like that. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we went to this Animal Flower Cave and we went to North Point when we were in Barbados. I have never been there. I've been living in Barbados for the first 18 years of my life, and I'd never been to North Point. And I'd never been to Animal Flower Cave, never been anywhere down there. And there's these cliffs and there's this cave, and it's so fascinating. I will probably share some of it on Instagram, but it's so fascinating that I have never been there. And so my husband and I were talking about it because I'm from the West. I'm from the West Coast, which is, one of the more touristy parts of Barbados. And my husband's from the South Coast, which is also a bit touristy. And we really never experienced this. And as we were going through the Animal Flower Cave, the guide, our tour guide, he was saying that he lived locally. He grew up in that area and he lived not too far away from the cave. And one of the things that they used to do as kids growing up was they would go to these cliffs. Honestly, I don't know how they did it, because the depth of the water when you jump off of those cliffs is over 40 feet deep. right? Probably more than that. Who knows, with erosion and everything else. So they would jump off of these cliffs and jump into the water and then swim back to another part of the rock and then climb up. And that was something that they did. And I was saying to my husband, like, I have no concept when I think about my childhood in Barbados and he thinks about his childhood in Barbados. That's not part of our experience. It was not part of our lived experience of growing up in Barbados. And what was really shocking to me was how we could all grow up on this small island, this small country, and have completely different experiences altogether. Like for me, my experience of childhood in Barbados was I had this woodland behind my house, which was amazing. My dad and I built a really fascinating rock garden there. If you've listened to my episodes about my dad, I would go to the beach every morning with my grandparents. That was part of my experience. Like that was my experience, going to the beach a lot, living so close to the beach and having the woodland behind our house. Now, my husband, very similar. He spent a lot of time at the beach on the South Coast, which is slightly different in terms of the experience of the actual water is slightly more wavy in the South Coast than it is in the West Coast. The West Coast beaches are a lot more calm. But in any event, that was our lived experience. We had no experiences of jumping off cliffs and all of that. And we all lived in the same country, us and this tour guide, and we had totally different experiences. And I say all of that to kind of make the point that as you are preparing for this new academic year, remember that your journey of becoming, your PhD journey, your scholarly mama journey, your motherhood journey, your marriage journey, all of these journeys of becoming are uniquely yours. Just because you are navigating these same journeys doesn't mean that you're going to have the same experience as somebody else, which means you shouldn't have necessarily the same expectations either. And so really being clear at this point in the journey where you're at the beginning, you're setting goals, you're setting intentions for this academic year, being kind to yourself in doing so and recognizing that your experience is uniquely yours. And so I wanted to end with that little story and reminder for you that you can make this year whatever you want it to be. And you don't have to be held back by anybody's expectations. You don't have to put yourself in any boxes, but you can make this year the best year yet for yourself as a scholarly mama. I hope that inspires you, and I cannot wait to see what you're going to do with this new academic year. If you're near the end of your PhD journey, please do drop me a DM on Instagram and let me know, because I want to celebrate with you when you get to the finish line. So until next time, as always, I'm sending you lots of love and lots of gratitude. Take care, mama. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you did and you want in on this movement, please head over to mrsmummyphd.com or scholarlymamas.com. If you want to do your PhD well without sacrificing yourself or those you love dearest, then you need your hands on my free training called the PhD with Purpose Maminar. When you join us inside Scholarly Mamas Explore, you'll get access to this free training and so much more. Remember, Mama, these are our journeys of becoming.